welcome to episode number 132 of the Cheesesteaks and Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts is where you're hearing this right now. My name is Jason Finelli, and it has been a while. I understand that I said we were coming out of hiatus just to go right back into hiatus again. We tried a live episode of Cheesesteaks and Controllers over Twitch, which worked to an extent. I'll still have to work out the kinks and the bugs in all of that. But so far, I'm feeling pretty good about the year, and that's what we are going to talk about. That's why I wanted to come back and record this episode, because the year 2023 is about half over. July the 1st is Saturday. This is going live on June the 30th, which is Friday. And that is the halfway point of the year. If you would believe it, we are already halfway through the 2023. And there has been a lot to talk about in video games, and not so much esports, because esports is becoming increasingly irrelevant, if you ask me. But that's a whole nother episode. But there's plenty to talk about. So we'll start things off by going through the first half of the year. We'll devote the entire second segment to June, because June has been nuts. And then we will end with a look forward for the rest of the year, because all of a sudden, the second half of the year is loaded with games to play. We thought the first half was loaded, and it is to an extent. But the second half of the year, oh boy, they really want us to play every single video game we can get our hands on and our wallets can support. So let's get right into it by talking about the first half of the year. And honestly, there are a lot of games here that I forgot even launched in this particular year. There were some indie gems like Pizza Tower. If you haven't played Pizza Tower yet, that came out back in I want to say January is when Pizza Tower hit. Maybe it was the end of last year, but it started to pick up steam in the beginning of this year. But it's a very, very fun, like, some people are calling it Wario Land 4, essentially. The Wario Land we never got, which is really, really cool. Also has a banging soundtrack. If you haven't heard that, you're hearing it right now underneath me. Very, very cool game. Had a great run at Summer Games Done Quick earlier this month, if you want to check out how to play it really fast. But very interesting sort of retro platformer / Metroidvania. It's a lot going on there, and one that took a lot of people, including myself, by surprise. As far as the other side of the coin, there's Forspoken, which came out to huge fanfare and kind of did not deliver as it was supposed to. I would say this is one of the more contentious games of the year, even now, even going into July. Forspoken has its supporters, has its detractors. It did not review terribly well. If I remember correctly, it's sitting at about a 63 or 64 on Metacritic, which is not ideal, but also not terrible. It sounds like it's very much in the eye of the beholder, which, happens from time to time. But that was really cool. Also, let's not forget, the year started with an absolute bomb of a Shadow Drop and Hi-Fi Rush game, and I use bomb in the terms of not it bombed, bomb in a, Magic the Gathering, because I play that now, sense of like it came out of nowhere and completely changed things and everybody loved it, or came out of nowhere with no expectations and everybody now loves it. Hi-Fi Rush, definitely one of the best surprises of the year. That game is so much fun. Rhythm-based hack and slash, great storyline behind it, great characters, great everything, a great surprise to start the year, and definitely a game that I would recommend if you haven't checked that out yet. Dead Space Remake, another big year for remakes. Dead Space started the year off with some spooky fun. We'll get into one that happened a little later on in the year, which continues to be one of the best games of the year. And then in February, we had another big remake in Metroid Prime Remastered. Shadow dropped out of nowhere at the end of a Nintendo Direct in, I want to say, February the 20th, maybe the 18th, somewhere in there, in that second week of the month is when that dropped out of nowhere. Like, it was shadow dropped on digital. The physical version came out a couple weeks later. But Metroid Prime Remastered, something that people have wanted forever, is now available to play on your Switch, which is super cool. Not the only remake we'll be talking about from Nintendo on this episode, but that will have to wait until later on. Also in February, we had bit of a slower, February the 8th is when that Nintendo Direct was. It was not the 20th. Sorry about that. Hogwarts Legacy, February the 10th, and all of the controversy, of course, that came with it. I have not played it. I just have no interest in it, half because of the controversy surrounding it and the creator of Harry Potter and all of the due criticism and deserved criticism that she gets, and that's putting it very, very lightly. And half because Harry Potter was just never my thing to begin with. I've watched some movies. I understand that it's a big cultural thing, just wasn't for me. But I wouldn't say 50-50. I'd say it's probably more 75-25 in the creator sucks favor. The creator sucks favor. That's a word. That's a word. That's a sentence. Can you tell I've been on hiatus for a while and I forgot how to talk? It's been a minute, but I hope you missed me. I missed you guys. Underrated gem in February would be Theorhythm Final Bar Line. I say underrated even though I think it scored like an 87 or an 88 on Metacritic and OpenCritic. But if you love rhythm-based games, Hi-Fi Rush, if you like something like that, but not quite the hack and slashy part, more like a DDR or a Guitar Hero where you have to match the notes. You're not playing an instrument, you're not dancing, you're using the controller, but it takes you through the entire history, essentially, of Final Fantasy through its music, which is, nothing to shake a stick at. Final Fantasy music is incredible and always has been. So Final Bar Line seeming to be like the big celebration of that franchise until it can rebuild the stocks a little bit more, because I don't know that there's a Square Enix RPG that game doesn't touch now with all the DLC out. It's added Xenogears, it's added Chrono Trigger. I believe there's some Octopath in there as well. So I don't know how much more Theorhythm can really do. But it's a very, very cool game. I highly recommend that you check that out. Another big release in February that I keep tending to forget about just because, it hasn't really made that much of an impact. PSVR 2. PlayStation VR 2 exists, and I just keep forgetting about it. I don't want to forget about it. I love the PSVR 1, but PSVR 2, I guess it came out too expensive. The games that came out for it were not as groundbreaking as Sony would have hoped, and it's just kind of there. I don't know if they expect late adopters, like with PSVR 1. I didn't adopt it, I think, until 2 years after it had launched, and it was at a heavily discounted rate and came with like 3 games or something like that. If PSVR 2 is in my future, it's not until something like that happens. But Horizon Call of the Mountain, the flagship launch title, apparently is pretty good. Nothing to write home about, but pretty good. Not to mention, Horizon Forbidden West was still pretty fresh, and then Burning Shores has come out since then, so there's been plenty of Horizon content to go around. So not sure what to think about PSVR 2 where I sit right now. I hope it can pick up. I hope it can get more users into it, but until it does that, I don't see the prognosis improving for it anytime soon. A couple other interesting titles that launched in February, which was a surprisingly loaded month. Atomic Heart, the weird first-person shooter that also had a bit of controversy surrounding it with the Russian developer. Wild Hearts, which was EA's take on EA, and I think Ninja Theory's take, not Ninja Theory, EA, and who was the other developer on Wild Hearts? Omega Force, that's it, sorry. I get those two mixed up all the time. Omega Force's take on Monster Hunter, which apparently is very good. Like a Dragon Ishin, Blood Bowl 3, Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. If you like Return to Dreamland, that got a Switch port this year. Octopath Traveler 2. Destiny 2 fans were happy with Lightfall, as far as I understand it. February was a big month. Lot going on in that month as far as new games to play were concerned. Kind of set the tone for the rest of the year. But the biggest month was still to come and is still to come, and that'll make sense as we go on. Moving on into March, Wo Long Fallen Dynasty came out to some aplomb. Did not review, I don't think, as well as they wanted it to, but still considered to be a decent enough sort of action RPG hack and slash sort of thing going on there. I think it's more going for like a Nioh than a Dark Souls, but still apparently a pretty cool game. After that, kind of had a bit of a light spell until WWE 2K23 on March 17th, which came out and improved on the already improved 2K22. So that's trending upward. You love to see it. Let's hope that keeps happening. Somewhere in here, yep, there it is, March 24th, we had ourselves Resident Evil 4 Remake, probably one of the most popular games of all time, completely remade for the new consoles, and apparently, I haven't finished it yet, but from what I've played so far, I can attest to this, the most, what's the word I'm looking for? The most faithful to its original out of the Resident Evil remake so far. And what I mean by that is Resident Evil 2 had a lot of tweaks to it. Resident Evil 3 had some tweaks to it, not many, but some. Resident Evil 4 basically sticks by the book of how the original game went. One of those, if it's not broken, don't fix it sort of things. It is updated, of course. Combat is updated. All those things are updated. But as far as storyline is concerned, it is very faithful. It doesn't deviate too far. It doesn't add too much to the original tale, which I thought was an interesting approach, especially when Village had just come out, and Village and Resident Evil 4 seem to have this connected tissue, right? They're very similar in aesthetic and setting and stuff like that. So I was wondering if there would be some sort of overlap between 4 and 8, but you did not see that. MLB The Show 23, baseball always a big mover here. I love this version. I love MLB The Show this year. I thought it was a very, very a good version of the only authentic simulation baseball game that there is. Not the only baseball game that came out this year. There is one out now that is good for the arcade types, but as far as simulation goes, can't beat it. Another underrated gem that might have gone underneath your radar but should not have, and that's Dredge. So you're on this like little boat and you're fishing, but there's also some psychological horror going on. I don't want to get into it too much, but it is a very interesting game to have on your radar. Also, PAX East happened around this time. Got to go back to Boston for the first time in a decade for PAX East. Went with John Jansen. We talked about that earlier in the year. Had a lot of fun. I got to get John back on to talk about what he's playing and where we are and what he's looking forward to in the second half of the year. Maybe next week before all the cool interviews start. What a tease for the rest of the month. But yeah, Dredge, go check out Dredge. That's definitely my underrated gem from March. April started to slow a little bit. We still had Everspace 2 finally launch on PCs. If you like vast space exploration with a little bit of, customization on your ships and stuff like that, it's a very, very cool game. Dogfighting in space, full 360 movement. Super, super awesome game. EA Sports PGA Tour, so we have a golf game for the first time in a couple of years from EA Sports, finally coming out this year. Tron Identity, a very underrated, I would say, or perhaps passed over visual novel by the team behind Volume, Bithell Games. Bithell really seems to understand Tron. I really like the way that they went with this, and I hope that we see more of that soon. I know that it does sound like it's chapter based. There's going to be more to it. They're going to build more to it. I'm looking forward to that. So whatever they decide to do after this, I like where this story ended up. I think it could have been a little longer. It didn't last as long as I would have wanted it to, but I did enjoy playing it. I think I gave it a 7 out of 10 on GameSpot. I'll have to go back and check my score. But that's a very cool game that I highly recommend if you have like an afternoon and you like Tron or you just like a good visual novel. That is a good one. Mega Man fans got Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. I know my friend Ron was very happy with that. One here and one later on in the year, 2 big-time League of Legends stories, those side stories that Riot Forge has been creating. The Mage Seeker was the first one in April, developed by the team at Digital Sun, which was awesome. I love that game very much. The second half, it takes a while to get moving, but once it's moving, man, game is great. Mage Seeker is super cool, and then Convergence in May, also very good, but that's less an action RPG and more for the Metroidvania players who like games like that. But both are very good, and I continue to say this. I love what Riot is doing with their world building. I absolutely love it. You build a franchise for 10 years. You give yourself hundreds of characters literally to check out. Now it's time to build on that lore with Arcane and other games. And this is so far, I think I would say they're 3 for 3 in games with Ruin King, Mage Seeker, and Convergence. Minecraft Legends also came out. That one has been off my radar. I just haven't had a chance to play it or a desire to play it, but sounds like it was pretty good. Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp finally launching after a year almost of its original release date, held for that long due to the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. Nintendo wanted to be respectful of that, which I completely understand. Also, very, very good game that came out to much it definitely represents the Advance Wars games very well. The second of 3 remakes we'll talk about from Nintendo coming up. Can you tell I'm excited about the one we're going to talk about in the second segment? Can you tell? Anyway, Dead Island 2 also launched. Love the demo at PAX East. Haven't been able to sit down with the full version yet, but apparently that impressed people more than its predecessors did, which is always a good sign. After so long of being in development hell, for it to come out and do pretty good makes me happy. So I hope that keeps up. End of April's not really much happening, but I do have a Star Wars Jedi Survivor was a big one. Sorry, I did miss that one. That's April 28th, snuck into April. I thought it was May, but it was April 28th. We have 2 under the radar games you may not have heard of before that have been huge. One I personally played, and one I've heard nothing but good things about that I have to sit down with. The one I haven't played is Cassette Beasts, role-playing game. People are saying it's fantastic stuff from Bitten Studio and Raw Fury. I gotta get on that. And Omega Strikers, which is like a League of Legends meets what the heck is it? Windjammers, excuse me. 3-on-3 with everyone having different powers and stuff like that. Interesting sort of amalgamation. Play a little bit of it on Steam. Want to check it out on iOS, see how that works on my iPad. But like what I played so far. Also, Honkai Star Rail, the follow-up to Genshin Impact from the team at Hoyoverse. That came out in April as well. Don't want to forget that. And then we're into May. May started out, unfortunately, with a big disappointment in Redfall. Probably going to go down as one of the most disappointing games of the year, just considering the pedigree of the studio that made it versus the product that came out. There have been things that have come out since that have talked about, some tumultuous times behind the scenes and stuff like that. So there's definitely a reason for it. It doesn't make it any less disappointing. And then May the 12th, everything stopped. The world stopped. Nothing happened anymore because The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom came out. And if you thought Elden Ring was popular last year, Tears of the Kingdom has exploded across social media thanks to its ability to build things. Now, if you're not a builder, if you don't like Minecraft or things like that, there are ways to get around that. There is a hidden power somewhere in the game where you can make templates where instead of actually having to build everything, you build it once, you save it, and then you just have it auto build whenever you want it to. But aside, opinions on building or not, the game is phenomenal. The story is really well told. Ganondorf is a badass. I still have to beat the 4th dungeon and the game. I'm not even at the end yet, but my goodness, am I having a good time? And I'm told that the ending set piece is completely exhilarating. So I still have a lot to go, and I'm having a good time. So if you haven't played that yet, I suggest you get on that as soon as possible. If you don't own a Switch, it's a good reason to pick up a Switch Lite and pick up Tears of the Kingdom. Pick up Breath of the Wild while you're at it. But I don't want to make it seem like that's where the game releases ended in May, because there's not. Humanity, a very interesting puzzle game from THA and Enhance. Enhance made Tetris Effect and Tetris Effect Connected, so that's a really cool game. Lego 2K Drive, a good racing game for children, because it's, build your own cars and race them, stuff like that. Convergence League of Legends story, which I talked about earlier, was May the 23rd. A Warhammer 40K retro shooter, like an old-style Doom first-person shooter came out called Bolt Gun. That completely shocked me. I really want to play that a little more, but what I've played so far is awesome. Star Trek Resurgence, which is notable because it's from Dramatic Labs, which is a team made up of old Telltale devs, and it plays that sort of, narrative storytelling, but in a Star Trek theme. That's one that's on my radar to play as well. And then another disappointing game, perhaps the second most disappointing game of the year, in Lord of the Rings Gollum. Now, technically, this game scored worse, so you may say that this one is more disappointing than Redfall, but I would argue that I don't think many people expected Gollum to be good. It was still worse than expectation, but I don't think anybody expected it to be actually good, no offense to the developers. Redfall at least had some pedigree behind it, which is what makes it more disappointing in my opinion. But so we had Gollum coming out at the end of the month. System Shock's remake is now out on PC. Another very good stuff. And then we're into June. I'm not going to get into June until the next segment. I will talk about some of the releases right now that have already come out. Just in the first week of June, you had Street Fighter 6, which was fantastic. You had Super Mega Baseball 4, which is great arcade-style baseball. Diablo 4, which people are putting hundreds and hundreds of hours into. And then from there, we have more that we'll get into in the next segment. June by itself, between the games that launched and the announcements that were made, was bonkers. And that is where we're going to go in the next segment. So that was the first couple months of the year. We'll talk about June next, as I said, and then we'll get into the final half of the year, or the second half of the year, which is just absolutely... Oh, man. There's a lot of video games to play between now and we drop the ball on 2024. And we'll talk about that later on in the show. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Cheese Sticks and Controllers, episode number 132. We are going to get into now the month of June 2023, which this will go out on June 30th. June will be ending as of tomorrow when you're listening to this, but as far as the game industry is concerned, for the rest of the year, lots of things to like in June. It was a pretty crazy month for the industry. It certainly busted out announcements all over the place. It started with... we'll get into the announcements first. First, let's talk about the games that launched this month. I already talked about Street Fighter that first week. We'll review that one more time for those that are somehow just tuning in the second segment. We had Street Fighter 6 and Super Mega Baseball 4. We had Diablo 4, and that was just the first week. And then getting into the rest of June, we had... Crash Team Rumble, we had Final Fantasy 16, Sonic Origins Plus, AEW Fight Forever, Story of Seasons of Wonderful Life, just Everybody 1-2 Switch is out today for those who like them, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, Master Detective Archives Rain Code. It's just an absolute loaded month. Dave the Diver came out of nowhere with a bunch of 9s. It's a fishing adventure for like slash cooking sim. That's one I got to really sink my teeth into. But the month was loaded with releases. We had plenty to play to begin our summer. But then the gaming gods decided to bestow upon us a bunch of announcements too, most of which shaped the rest of the year. And again, in the final segment, we'll get into why the second half of the year is already loaded, and all this did was just load it even more. But let's start with Summer Games Fest 2023. Jeff Keighley Fest, went 2 play days this year and was in the arena for the Summer Games Fest Live. Had a blast. If I could speak on that real quick, Summer Games Fest play days was basically a 2-day block party for video games. It was in this place where they had a whole block basically of different buildings. They rented out all different buildings, but they're in one like social area almost. Kind of reminds me of like the Fillmore in Philadelphia, which is, only Philadelphia people will know that. But the theater is like outside. There's all these little restaurants and walking areas that you can go to. It kind of reminded me of that, but imagine all of them were filled with video games to play. It was a bit of heaven, not gonna lie. It was very, very cool. You had the main room with all the demos in it. You had some side rooms with other, presentations and demos and stuff like that. Just a really, really cool thing he's got going there. Pretty happy how that turned out. But as far as the theater presentation was concerned, the big announcements were Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, which started off the thing, brand new Metroidvania Prince of Persia game, which sounds pretty cool. First gameplay of Mortal Kombat 1, which I got to play at Playdays and then again during the stress test over the weekend, and that game is shaping up quite nicely. I love the cameo system, love how they're going to be able to juxtapose putting classic characters with classic moves into the modern, new, sort of rebooted era. I love how the cameos can flow in and out of combos very quickly. The fatalities, of course, are always good. So Mortal Kombat 1, definitely one to circle on my calendar. Sonic Superstars, a brand new side-scrolling Sonic that brings the old format to a new age, which looks really, really cool. Lies of P is finally coming out later this year. That's the Pinocchio Bloodborne Pinocchio, which is two things I never thought would go together. Saw a full blowout on Alan Wake 2, which again, coming out this year. Are you seeing a theme here? Marvel Spider-Man 2, got a little more gameplay of that earlier at the PlayStation Showcase, which I completely forgot to mention. We'll backtrack. And then Spider-Man 2 is coming out later this year as well. Then we got Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was the big announcement there, and a bunch of other things too. I'm glossing over some of the things that happened. I don't want to forget them, but there's so much that was announced between the end of the year, between the end of May and the first couple weeks of June. I want to make sure I get as much as I can in the small time that I've allotted myself. So now we'll backtrack a little bit, and we'll go back to the PlayStation Showcase that I did end up forgetting, which is pretty bad of me because there was an announcement there that is probably going to end up being one of my favorite announcements of the year, and one that I don't know if or when it's ever coming out. I'm not sure. It definitely seemed like it was one of those announcements where we just need people to come work on this game. It's a bit of a recruiting tool, but if they need players, consider me recruited. And that, of course, is the Metal Gear Solid remake. How could I not be absolutely out of my gourd for that one? Great trailer. Love the trailer. Love the announcement. Everything about it is very cool. I just need more. I just need it to come out. I would appreciate it if it would come out for me. But also at the PlayStation Showcase, we saw Spider-Man 2. Again, the release date was at Summer Game Fest, but then we saw Kraven the Hunter for the first time. We saw some gameplay with Peter Parker using the symbiote, which was awesome, and then switching between Miles Morales and Peter Parker. Wasn't clear on whether that's at will, but it definitely said, switch to Miles and to go do stuff there, which was cool. Assassin's Creed Mirage is finally getting a bit of a blowout between this and Ubisoft Forward, which we'll talk about. That comes out later this year. Saw the first footage of a game from Haven Studios, which is being run by Jade Raymond, who was a long-time industry veteran, made an impact at Ubisoft with a Splinter Cell and Assassin's Creed and stuff like that. Helldivers 2 was shown, Ghost Runners 2, and then a couple of other smaller games. Alan Wake 2, no, that's not a smaller one, but that was also there. Marathon is coming back as a team-based multiplayer shooter. Does not have a single-player campaign, but still pretty cool. PlayStation showed off its handheld, where it's like a cloud gaming device where you can stream from your PlayStation anywhere. Kind of looks like a Switch with a DualSense attached to it, which is not a bad call if you ask me, but there it is. And that was the PlayStation Showcase. Kind of underwhelmed. Some people weren't entirely into it, but I thought there were some good things there, especially when you look at it with other expansions. Like, now that we know the Spider-Man release date, the PlayStation Showcase stuff was cool, right? So, and the Assassin's Creed Mirage stuff at Ubisoft, PlayStation enhances the PlayStation Showcase a little bit, in my opinion, too. So definitely cool stuff there, but I would say probably one of the most underwhelming of the time of this year, from like May to June, the summer announcement season, let's call it. Probably one of the most disappointing overall, looking back at all of them, comparing them all to each other. Microsoft then showed up on Sunday after Summer Games Fest and immediately started with a new Fable, which is, the irreverent sort of humor that we expect. Not sure how much of that was gameplay versus actual, or actual gameplay versus CGI footage, but it still looked awesome. South of Midnight, the next game from Compulsion, who made We Happy Few. I just hope this game is better than that one, no offense. Star Wars Outlaws, which is Ubisoft's open world Star Wars game by the team that made The Division, following, as the name suggests, a group of outlaws. You can be wanted, you can wanted by the Imperial forces and then have to run away from them. You transition from on the ground to on air, basically, flawlessly, it looked like. But we'll see. We saw more at Ubisoft Forward as well. Payday 3 got a little bit of a trailer at this thing. Persona 3 is being remade as Persona 3 Reload in early 2024. Avowed was shown after several years in development. Got to see Obsidian's new RPG, which looks like their take on Skyrim, which I am completely fine with. Sea of Thieves got a Legend of Monkey Island expansion, which makes a lot of sense. Hellblade 2 continues to be one of my most anticipated games of the year. That trailer was awesome, and all it was her talking to herself and hearing all the different voices in my headphones. That was super cool. Like a Dragon 8 was shown, and it was our poor guy Ichiban, naked on the beach. Sorry, buddy. Hope that works out for you. Starfield, though. Starfield was the big anchor of their show. They gave it like 45 minutes of what you're going to do, how you can customize yourself, 1,000 planets to go through, base building, skill trees, stuff like that. Just a huge amount of information on Starfield, which made it one of the most anticipated games of the year for me, because I like Elder Scrolls, I like Fallout, but space, I'm learning, is my jam. So if I can go out in space and do stuff like that, that sounds really good to me. Will it challenge Zelda for Game of the Year or the favorite for Game of the Year? It could. I wouldn't be surprised if we got to December and there was a heated argument between the two. But we'll see. Right now, it looks really, really cool. But Bethesda Game Studio, Todd Howard Games, do tend to come out with some glitches and some issues right out of the box. So if they can avoid those, then they're golden. The next up, we had Ubisoft Forward. We had Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora gameplay shown for the first time. That's coming out in December. X Defiant, which is the squad-based shooter with characters based on different Ubisoft franchises, which is a pretty cool idea. Prince of Persia Lost Crown, we saw more of. Division Resurgence, which is their mobile game. A new closed beta for Skull of Bones, which was supposed to come out earlier this year or even last year, if you recall. Assassin's Creed Nexus, which is a VR Assassin's Creed. And then we saw Mirage. We saw Jade, which is a mobile game. And then it ended with the gameplay for Star Wars Outlaws. So a decent showing from Ubisoft, building on things that they had shown at other conferences. Mirage at PlayStation, Star Wars at Xbox. Essentially what they did at E3 time. Very similar, in fact, to what they used to do at E3 time. But, also having their own sort of showcase to show everything off as they wanted to. Definitely liked what I saw from them. Outlaws sticks out to me. I was getting Far Cry Primal vibes from Avatar, which is a good comparison. And I'm very much looking forward to what's going on there. And then we have the Nintendo Direct. Came out of nowhere, surprised us on the 21st of June. We knew we could expect some cool stuff. Nintendo usually delivers in that regard, but we didn't know exactly what to expect. And it started out with things we already knew, like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the hidden treasure of Area Zero, which is the DLC. Did not have a release date attached to it, which I found odd. Saw some more Sonic Superstars. Did get a new game in Palia, which is a free-to-play life farming simulator. Build your own village. Persona 5 Tactica was announced at the Xbox conference, so we had already seen that a week prior. Detective Pikachu Returns was cool. The new game with Detective Pikachu, a brand new adventure building on the original DS and 3DS release. That's a good idea. I think certainly fits well on the Switch itself. But it was sort of underwhelming in the first 10, 15 minutes or so. Things we had already seen before. And then it got to the checkpoint, right after Detective Pikachu, it gets to the checkpoint with Koizumi-san and the other fella. I want to say Takayama, but I always get his name wrong. And they're there talking about, what's coming. And they do, for now, please look at this. And they snap their fingers. Now, I am watching this trying to write up the Detective Pikachu news because I'm covering it for GameSpot. We're all working on it together. So I'm, typing furiously away at Detective Pikachu. I'm like half listening, half in, half out. They say, take a look at this, and they snap their fingers, and I'm like, all right, here comes something else. And then this music plays. And I lost my mind. I absolutely lost my mind. I cannot believe that we are going to be playing a remade version of Super Mario RPG in the year 2023. 27 years after the original game came out. Almost 30 years ago. It still just boggles my mind that we're finally getting this after what many perceived to be, issues between Square and Nintendo. It's why Geno was never in Smash Brothers or even referenced in Smash Brothers. Same with Mallow and all the other RPG characters. And they're coming back. They're finally coming back in a brand new remake that looks beautiful. I cried. I'm not going to lie. I shed a tear or two about how excited I was about this game. My managing editor called me, and justifiably called me a nerd in the Slack chat. But I play this game every year. I can't say enough about it. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Maybe my favorite game of all time, considering I play it so much. And now this year, I'm just going to wait. I mean, I've already played a little bit this year for an upcoming podcast, wink. But I may just wait now and wait for this remake to come out and just get lost in this game all over again. I'm so excited to see Belome and Booster and, Geno and Mallow, like we said, Frog Fuchsius, Todofsky, all of these characters. Raz and Rainey and Mary Moore. Oh, man, I can't wait. Jonathan Joe. Oh, it's going to be great. I can't wait. Anyway, let's move on from Super Mario RPG. That's not what you're listening to. This is the Super Mario RPG podcast. It's Cheesesteaks and Controllers. I got to move on. So I talked about Detective Pikachu. Princess Peach is getting her own game in 2024. I can tell you one 7-year-old who was very happy about that. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon also coming to Nintendo Switch, which is a good idea. The Batman Arkham trilogy. Love that. Never did play Night. Now this will be my chance to do that. Pikmin 4 on its way this month, July 21st. Saw some of the Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope DLC, and then it ended with a brand new 2D platforming Mario game called Super Mario Bros. Wonder, with a version of Mario where he turns into an elephant and the internet lost its mind. Besides Elephant Mario, the game looks very cool. Looks to add a little weirdness to the formula where it's like going between dark and light worlds. In the dark world, the pipes are moving around like inchworms. It was an interesting presentation, but definitely looks cool. Super Mario Bros. Wonder definitely looks cool, and I'm excited to see what they have going on there. October the 20th, I want to say. But again, we'll get into that in the second half of this show. The third segment of this show, excuse me. So there you go. A packed June between games that came out and announcements that were made. Tell me your favorites. I'm at Big Man Finelli on Twitter. Clearly, you now know mine. But there was a lot of good stuff to be very excited about, both new IPs, new takes on old IPs, or sequels or what have you. We're eating good in 2023 so far, and we're going to eat even better in the second half of the year, because following this segment, we'll get into the last segment shortly. The rest of the year is absolutely loaded, and I am excited to walk you through what that means. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Cheesesteaks and Controllers, episode number 132, wrapping things up at our 2023 year in review and preview, which is a year in review and preview. That's a podcast title right there, folks. We're going to talk about the end of the year and specifically everything that's coming out. I had the opportunity to write a feature just after Summer Games Fest and everything that happened called The second half of 2023 is jam-packed with games all of a sudden. That was the name of the feature, and that was before the Nintendo Direct happened, which then I had to update said feature with Nintendo Direct's stuff. So I'm going to take from that in this final segment. You can read the entire thing at GameSpot.com if you want to go find it there. But let's talk about the rest of the year, shall we? It's a big one. There's a lot happening and a lot going on, and a lot of that, if you'd believe it, was shaped or took place from Summer Games Fest on. A lot of the things that have filled out the rest of this year got dates in the month of June or in the PlayStation Showcase right before it. So if we take a second and we go through, so let's talk about first autumn. Let's talk about September and October, and I'm going to use my article as a basis for this argument. So I might take some lines right from it. You'll know when I'm reading, obviously, but let's start with autumn, which I called autumn abundance in this article, and specifically, as things rolled in and we began to take stock of everything being announced to us, there's a 10-day period in October that now contains 5 of the most anticipated launches of the year. Forza Motorsports kick things off on October 10th. Assassin's Creed Mirage is 2 days later on the 12th. Alan Wake 2 is 5 days later on the 17th. And then 3 days after that, we have Marvel Spider-Man 2 and Super Mario Brothers Wonder. All 5 of those games in a 10-day window. And that's not including Lords of the Fallen, which has a bit of a following, and Endless Dungeon, which are October 13th and October 19th specifically, which also fall in that 10 days. And then if you go through October, like either way, if you make the range the entire month of October, you have Disgaea 7 on October 3rd, you have Cities Skylines 2 on October 24th, and the Alone in the Dark reboot on October 25th. That's a lot, right? Already starting, that's a ton, and like we're just getting started here, and October is already looking like a wallet killer before we even have a chance to look at the next month, July. We're looking at October and we're like, oh no, what's happening? Why is this month doing this to me? How am I supposed to save enough money to be able to play these games? But definitely cool that all these games are coming out. It's just that there are too many to speak of. But then if we go into September, things are not getting much better because Starfield is September the 6th. And then 8 days later, we have another small gauntlet of games where within a week, we get The Crew Motorfest, we get Lies of P, we get Mortal Kombat 1, and we get Eternites, which is like a hack and slash dating sim. It's a weird game. I previewed it for MMORPG. It's an interesting one. And they all are within the 14th, Motorfest, and then Lies of P, Mortal Kombat are both the 19th, and then Eternites is the 21st. And then there's 2 games in there that have a vague September window, in Monster Hunter Now from Niantic and RoboCop Rogue City that could launch at any time in the month. Now, RoboCop does have a closed beta coming up, and I think Monster Hunter has a test coming up too, so maybe they get pushed back after testing happens, but right now, a lot of stuff happening. November and December, not as busy, so the year may eventually slow down as we get into the holiday. But Like a Dryden Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, is still there. Persona 5 Tactica is there on November 17th. Like a Dragon Gaiden is November 9th, excuse me. Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is the 7th. And then Super Mario RPG is also November 17th, the same day as Tactica. So still some heavy hitters going into right into Black Friday. I believe, if memory serves, November 17th is the Friday before Black Friday. Is it not? Yes, it is. That is exactly right. This year, I'm fairly certain Thanksgiving is the 23rd. I will check that right now while we are on this little podcast, and it is. So the week before Black Friday, Persona 5 Tactica and Super Mario RPG drop. That's brutal. Fall is brutal, friends. If you're a video gamer, save your money. So now we have to talk about the months before that. Like, we have July and August to go before we get to September, and they are not slowing down either. So I wrote this article originally on June 15th, right after the dust settled from all of the Summer Games Fest shenanigans. I had said that between the end of the month and when I was publishing the article, there were multiple games that had come out: F1 23, Park Beyond, Crash Team Rumble, Final Fantasy 16, AEW Fight Forever, Ghost Trick, and Master Detective. Things I had talked about in the last segment. But then July, well, starts off a little slow. There's nothing in the first week or so of July, but then that picks up with Oxenfree 2, Lost Signals, Exo Primal, July 14th. Lost Signals, Oxenfree 2 is 2 days before that, July 12th. And then there's another 8-day another multiple release in one small bit of time situation with Immortals of Avium on July 20th, although that might have just gotten delayed a bit. I'll have to check that. Pikmin 4, July 21st, Remnant 2, July 25th, and Disney Illusion Island on July 28th. That's crazy. That's crazy. There's so many things coming out in July, and then that doesn't even talk about August. I have 10 different names for games in August in this article that I wrote. Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, on August 3rd. WrestleQuest on August 8th. 30XX on August 9th. Atlas Fallen on August 10th. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk on August 18th. Blasphemous 2, August 24th. Goodbye Volcano High, August 29th. Sea of Stars, August 29th. That is a heapin' helpin' of indies in the month of August, but also Armored Core 6 on August 25th and Baldur's Gate 3 on August 3rd for PC and September 6th for PS5. It's too many games. There are too many games coming, and I just can't keep track of them all. But then the Nintendo Direct, I mentioned Super Mario Bros. Wonder on the 20th. I mentioned RPG on November 17th. But Detective Pikachu is October 6th. WarioWare Move It is November 3rd, a new WarioWare game. Star Ocean, The Second Story R, which is a remake of a PlayStation-era RPG. That's November 2nd. And then Metal Gear Solid Master Collection, which is Metal Gear Solids 1, 2, 3, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, and perhaps something else. That's October 24th. I don't hate the fact that we have too many choices to play, but my wallet does. Like, I don't even know how to map this out. Like, if I don't know what I'm reviewing either. Obviously, I don't know until the codes are available. But if I had to guess what I'm going to play between now and the end of the year, I want to make room for Final Fantasy 16, but that's going to be a big chunk of time. I want to play Oxenfree 2. I want to play Disney Illusion Island with the family. I want to play WrestleQuest. I want to play Stray Gods. I want to play Sea of Stars. I want to play Armored Core 6. I want to play Baldur's Gate, but that's going to be a huge chunk of time. I want to I want to play Starfield, but that's going to take my whole life. Mortal Kombat 1 is one I'm probably going to play at launch. Alan Wake 2, Assassin's Creed, Spider-Man, and Super Mario. I'm not really a racing guy, so 4 of those 5 in that big October 10-day period don't really apply to me, but that just means I have 4 in an 8-day period. It doesn't end. There's so many games to play, and the only way I'm going to be able to play all these is to clone myself, and that technology doesn't exist. So, what do I suggest that you do? You set priorities, and you set a budget for yourself. You're not going to be able to play all these games. There's just not enough time in the world. We're talking about Starfield, which will require probably 100 hours at minimum, and then Baldur's Gate, which will probably ask that much of you as well. Not to mention the other adventure games or RPG games that are here. It's going to be a big year. It's going to be a big year for software. All the consoles are firing on all cylinders. Part of me feels like this is also the industry catching up with itself after a couple of years of pandemic-related delays and things like that. We might start getting on more footing again and see regular releases like this. But man, oh man, if you say you're bored with the industry anytime between now and the end of the year, you're just not looking hard enough, my friends. You're just not looking hard enough. This is we eating good, as the gamers, as the kids say. Gamers are eating. We are having a good time. The only challenge is finding the games that you want to play more than others and budgeting your time in a way that makes sense to you. But that is a problem for another day. Right now, we are at the end of episode number 132 of the Cheesesteaks Controllers podcast, presented by Fox PHL The Gambler, 102.5 FM, 1480 AM, iHeartRadio. Wherever you get your podcasts is where you can hear this. As I say at the end of every episode, if you are listening to these words right now, it means you're at the end, and I appreciate you for getting here. It is always an honor to me that everyone who listens to this does so, especially when I take a month off and don't tell anybody. I do promise to be regular in July. I have a couple of interviews cooking in the pipeline, including one just before San Diego Comic-Con that I am very, very excited about. I've been talking about this for months with the people that I'll be interviewing. It is a return interview, so there's a hint. It is people who have been here before, but it's going to be a much bigger, more expanded version of that, and I'm so very much looking forward to it. I can't wait to share it with you, and I can't wait to have the conversation with them. So I'll leave you with that little tease, but for now, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, a great week right behind it, including a happy 4th of July, and we will be back next week with the latest and greatest in video games here on Cheesesteaks and Controllers. Bye-bye.